Welcome back again. I am Dr. Daniel Handysides, although most of you know me as Danny. I have the privilege, and that's what the series is called, is it's my privilege. I have the privilege of talking to Atwani, a good friend of mine. And so let's jump into that. Who are you, Atwani, and how do you know me?
Hi. Danny and I met back in Canada. That's where we're both from. We really became friends when we attended university together at Andrews University. I did chemistry and he did biology, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we kind of drifted apart a little bit. I think he went off to graduate school. I went off to medical school. But we had a good grip of years there where we were really thick as thieves, they say. So I'll always remember those times.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about those friendships that you can, I mean, it's been a long time since we've actually talked. I mean, we keep up with each other's lives, or I keep up with your life via Facebook because that's the modern way. And, you know, you see things and you go, hey, man, he got a good looking wife. And, hey, look at his life going on. And you see the posts that people do. But, yeah, we don't always reach out. So it is good to get to talk to you. But we're talking about something that sort of sucks. And, you know, as a white guy, it's not an experience that I can relate to, but I can definitely give a platform or a voice to other people's experience. And so I guess my question to you is your personal experience with racism. What do you want to share, or what do you have to share about that?
Okay, so I have a few items on the agenda. So I'll kind of dive in. You know, when I first, you know, I came to the United States for university, and that was back in 1997. And when I first came to the United States, I did not believe racism existed. I thought it was overblown. All of my black friends, I thought they were overreactive, oversensitive, too quick to pull the race card. And, you know, that was kind of my perception for many years. But as a black person, if you live in the United States for long enough, you sooner or later start to appreciate racism. So let's talk about the police. You know, the police is all the rage these days. Police are killing people left, right, and center. Many of them black, and that's an important thing. I mean, you know, statistics say that 250 black people killed every year by the police. But I think we have to keep in mind that, you know, there are a long laundry list of racist things that occur up to and leading up to actually killing someone. You know, if we think that the only act of racism by the police is killing someone, then perhaps there are only 250 racist cops in the United States. But, you know, and I'm still alive, so somehow I experienced racism and they didn't kill me. So, you know, so for instance, you know, every time that I'm pulled over by the cops, I sense a attitude, a condescension, I don't know, racism, for lack of a better word, from everything the cop says to everything the cop does, presumption of guilt. You know, I used to think this was normal. I used to think this was how cops treated everyone. But, you know, then I met my wife. She's an Asian American, and she's not white. I'm sure she experiences some level of racism. But when she rides in the car with me, and if we ever get pulled over, she is absolutely floored at the way the cops treat me. So that's the experience of someone else who is not black, who is watching it, having been on the other side, you know? And I think, you know, it's easy to say that, well, you know, well, I have to be I have to be careful with the cops too because I'm white. Sure, but I have to be careful because I have to avoid getting shot.
Right.
Whereas you just have to be careful because he might give you a ticket.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember distinctly being trained as a kid. Yes, sir, no, sir, keep your hands still, do all these things. But it was never so that you'd be safe. It was always
Right.
because if you're polite, you might get a warning. And
Right.
it's a totally different mind frame. The people who are watching multiple ones of these videos, that we've talked about this, and that fear. I mean, for those who don't know Otwani, he'll never tell you this, and no disrespect to everybody who else I've interviewed. Otwani is the smartest guy I know. He literally thought that OChem was like fun, which should put it out there. He was like, oh yeah, let's take chemicals and make new molecules. And I mean, you have a PhD and a DR and an MD, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll get into that a little bit later. But
I'll,
yeah.
I'll let you do that. So the condescent for anybody, for a police officer to come down and look down, that hit me when you said that. So I'll let you keep.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that it doesn't just stop with police officers, right? It's basically every arm of the government, every arm of law enforcement. So for instance, let's talk about crossing the border. Okay. Every time I cross the border, whether it's by car or by air, I am always pulled over for extra screening, searching my car. Okay. There was a period of time when I moved back to Canada. I was living in Montreal for 2 years. My wife is a U.S. citizen. So she was commuting across the border every day, twice a day for work. Okay. And whenever she crosses the border by herself, she would chat with the border guards, banter with them, argue with them. If she thought they were being unfair, she would tell them. Okay. She was never pulled over for extra screening, ever. Okay. Whenever I ride in the car with her, across the border, we are always pulled over for extra screening with the baby. Okay. When we had our first child, we were in Montreal, and my wife had United States health insurance. And so we drove to Vermont for our prenatal care. And when we were in labor, we drove across the border to Vermont. Okay. So we arrive at the border 3 a.m. My wife's in active labor. And they pull us over for extra screening, sit in the booth for 35, 40 minutes. My wife is fuming. I'm like, yeah, this is just how it is. Okay. And, it's obvious to her. It's obvious to her. And it's a stark difference, in her mind, So, and now keep in mind, I'm a Canadian citizen with no arrests. I have enhanced TSA security clearance. I'm a physician. I've gone through multiple FBI screenings to be a physician. I have a DEA license.
And everybody who's watching can see how sketchy you look.
Yeah, I look very sketchy. Okay. It's clear. It's obvious.
It's clear. It's obvious.
So I never been shot at by the police, but you could argue that there's some racist things going on there. Let's talk about career for a minute. Okay. Not to big myself up a little bit, but I have an MD from Vanderbilt University, which is pretty much an Ivy League in the South. I have a PhD in molecular biology from Vanderbilt. I have about 12 first author publications. I authored a book chapter. I've given about 15 or so podium talks at national meetings. I have 2 advanced fellowships in esophagus surgery and cancer surgery. However, when I applied to residency, it took me 2 years to get a residency spot.
I didn't know that.
When I applied to surgical oncology fellowship, it took me 2 years. to get a spot.
Hmm.
I had a buddy in residency who's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, who doesn't have a PhD, who didn't express an interest in going into surgical oncology until his last year of fellowship, who had maybe about one publication. He matched his first year. I was hesitant to call it at the time, but my wife was like, that's obvious bias. Now I'm doing okay. You know, I did my fellowships. I got my, matter of fact, it turned out well for me in the end, because during that year, I did an extra fellowship in esophagus surgery, and, you know, but I don't know. Is there some bias there? I don't know. You decide. You know, obviously, you know, I could go on and on about microaggressions. You go to the restaurant and how people treat you. You go to pump your gas and how people treat you. My wife would go on, right? Because she, you know, I'm kind of over it, you know, but she fumes about it when we're together.
And that's a sad refrain that I've heard from a lot of my friends and a lot of people in color in general is they've gotten used to it. It's reached the point where it's reached the point where the experience isn't the anomaly. It's just the expectation. And that's sad, because what that means is then that we've reached a point where it's apathetic. You know, it's
yes,
things aren't gonna change. And I guess the point of these video series is we're not going to end racism. I mean, I wish I could say, oh, I'm going to interview, you know, like 25 of my closest friends and people of color and, you know, indigenous people and black men and I'll fix racism. Well, that's bull crap. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's arrogance. But these types of stories, the situations that we could go on and on about that you
I have one more to tell you, by the way.
Please do.
But no, finish what you're saying.
I was just saying it doesn't. These stories are in and of themselves. They're not going to change it, but they need to be heard, and they need to be ruminated on. It's not. My challenge is the George Floyds of the world, the Trayvon Martins. These kids, they didn't get a chance to talk their story. They didn't get a chance to say it. And my worry for every friend that I have is, you know, that I have things in my life that if I was dead and the news wanted to pull up, I'd be like, I don't want everybody to know that. Everybody does.
Of course.
And that's the first thing that comes up. Oh, well, you know, he was trying to put a counterfeit bill. Who cares what he was trying to do? I don't care, you know, what it is. Right. Don't kill people. That's not the role of the cop. But please continue with the...
So my brother, who you know, he's your buddy. Actually, I think he was your friend first, and then we met.
That's true.
So my brother
may almost be as smart as a 20, but not quite. Well, when Tani watches this, he'll get upset.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's a few percentages lower. You know,
just a couple.
So my brother, he is a physician. He's a GYN surgeon at the Mayo. In Rochester, Minnesota. And he lives in a nice neighborhood, predominantly white. He lives in a nice house. He makes good money. He has a wife. She's white. She's Hispanic, white, and he has 2 nice kids. A couple of years ago, long before this whole George Floyd business, he was sleeping. They were sleeping, and they heard some noises in the house. And they woke up, and my brother decides that he's going to call the cops. He thinks maybe there's someone breaking into his house. Now, when he first told me this story, at this point in the story, I said, are you crazy? Don't you know you're black? You don't call the cops to your house. So in any case, he went on with the story. So, the cops arrived at the house. My brother and his wife are, I think, in their bedroom. I don't know how he let them in. Maybe he has smart locks. Maybe he opened the lock for them. They start clearing the house. My brother's in his boxers, right, in his bedroom. cops come up to the bedroom. They open the door, or my brother opens the door, or something. My brother's in his boxers, and next thing you know, guns are out in the middle of his bedroom. He's like being, put down on the floor, and his kids are like, what the hell is going on? His wife's like, no, this is my husband. I mean, you decide. That's not my story, but I'm sure he'll tell it better. But I think.
But it is your story, man.
There's a problem. There's a problem with that story.
Yeah, and it is your story, because how many men of color are missing their brothers because of stupid mistakes like that?
Exactly. That night, my brother nearly learned the hard way not to call the cops to your house if you're black.
Yeah. I guess the next question that I have, and it's hard because this isn't an easy thing to solve, but if there was one thing that you would want to see change, and want to see change now, what would that be?
I think at times black people and white people too, they don't participate in the political process. They don't become involved in civic responsibilities in their state or their city. And then one day they don't like how the world is, and they take to the streets and protest. But we have a democratic society, and there are processes by which, laws are made and things are reviewed, and that process starts with voting and proceeds with making laws that are fair and then enforcing those laws in the courts. So I think that it's a little hypocritical for a small minority of us to be the ones voting and then turn around and get upset that the laws are unfair and that the laws are being applied unfairly. So if I were to change one thing, I would want every last person who is eligible to participate in society. Go vote. If you vote in good people, you'll get good laws, and you will get good judges and enforcement of those laws. And I think that's the start. That's the end game. We can protest in the street all we want, but at the end of the day, the actual change, the actual end game is fair laws by people who are voted in, who ought to be, morally good people in some way.
And I think that's a powerful, powerful statement. I mean, I think you're seeing corporations make changes currently, and I think they're good changes. I don't think anybody can, with a clear conscience, sit there and say, oh no, I never thought Aunt Jemima was racist. I mean, we all did. We all tacitly went, yeah, okay, it's fine. As a white person, you're like, it's just a bottle. It's you sort of wash things over. But my fear is we get corporations and we get changes that are doing that, but the fundamentals aren't changing. So we're changing bottles, we're changing labels, but we're not changing policies. Right. And it is scary when you see Republican or Democratic leaders who will do things like take a knee in the House. They all take a knee in solidarity, and it's like, well, don't take a knee, change the laws. Like
exactly.
You are the policy people. You have the power to change this fundamentally. So doing that. So I think your statement of voting and getting active is a powerful one, and that's it. It's one that we can do. Unfortunately, I wish a lot of people say, well, we do live in one world, but we don't. And I think as a white friend of yours, what's one thing that you would want me to know and be aware of your world, of the world that you view and the world that you live in?
Yeah. I think I would want you to know that I would want you to understand that creating a fair and just world and eliminating racism is a problem for white people to solve. White people are 60, 70% of the population in the United States, and you hold all the power. So black people are, in general, tired of yelling about racism on deaf ears. And that's coming from a black person who didn't believe in racism until 4 years ago.
Yep. This is my daughter. We're keeping it informal. Hope, say hi.
Hi.
Hey,
now, can you?
How are you?
That's Uncle Latwani. Can you please go out because this is Daddy's trying to talk.
And one thing.
And out.
You forgot.
Hey, serious.
You missed the whole show.
I did. She watched Lion King for the very first time.
That's classic.
It is a classic. We're trying to start with nightmares, so that's the goal. No, when you say that, it hits me because this is hard. This is something where I feel like when Rodney King occurred was the first time I, as a person, had really witnessed racism. I grew up in Canada with you, and Canada hides it well.
They do.
Clear. Let's be clear.
I didn't think racism existed, when I left Canada. It does,
It does, but it's very low-key racism. Whereas in the U.S., maybe it's a little bit more. And I remember watching that going, well, things will change. And all those cops were acquitted. And we were teenagers. That was 98, 97, I think. 96, I don't know the exact date. Somewhere around there. So I was 16, and you think, oh, it'll change, and then it doesn't, and it just keeps going. And I think it's a sad statement, but this is the civil rights era will not come to fruition until white people step up and until people start to address this. And I think it is one of those things where having discussions, keeping discussions going, knowing that it isn't just wait till the next man dies or next woman dies, because she's sitting in her bed because they come trying to arrest her boyfriend and shoot her, there's so many stories. So I think it's powerful, and it's not easy. And I think sometimes being non-racist is different than being anti-racist. It's easy to say, oh, I'm not a racist. But are you actively fighting it? So I think
I was just going to mention that I think that those of us who are who would like an end to systematic racism, I think that sometimes we believe that everybody wants that. But I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that there are plenty of people who, I'm sure there are people who simply just don't understand the issue and it doesn't affect them, and they enjoy some white privilege, But I think there are also plenty of people who would like racism to continue, benefits them. And we cannot always just simply assume that everybody would like racism to end. Let's be real.
It's a fight, and it's one that we need to keep going. My last question for you is a very, very serious one.
Yeah.
What's your favorite ice cream, man?
Vanilla, all the way.
that is fantastic. It's now become high level nudity for those of you who are watching. I want you guys to recognize that these discussions are not going to solve the world.
Daddy,
listen.
Where am I going to sleep? My bed is soaked with pee.
Reality, people. My bed is soaked with pee. This is the life.
That's a real problem.
This is a real problem. This isn't going to solve everything. But please, for those of you who are watching it, share these videos. Keep these discussions going. Talk to your friends. Talk to people who are experiencing this. Hearing Atwani talk about these challenges, it saddens me. But beyond that, it scares me because I want my daughter to have a life that is full, and you can't have that when everybody's not equal. And it's not a zero-sum game. Giving equality to everybody doesn't rob anybody else of equality. Having cops that are not kneeling on people's necks means that one day when I get pulled over, I won't have a cop kneeling on my neck, or she won't have a cop kneeling on her neck. It's not a zero sum. And I think that's the challenge. You love vanilla ice cream, and I laughed really hard because that's my favorite flavor. I mean, I vacillate between whether French vanilla or plain vanilla, or sometimes I'll do like a sea salt caramel, and my wife's like, that's not vanilla at all. And I'm like,
a little caramel in there is not too bad.
A little caramel is not too bad at all. But we're all human. And at the end of the day, we need to reach that. You are right. There are some people who will be racist. And for those of us who are believers, you know, we will wait till Christ comes back and to fix that. But that doesn't mean we sit idle and we don't stand up for justice and we don't continue this fight. So Atwani, thank you so much, brother, for talking to me. And I'm sure
Pleasure.
we'll
so
talk
nice
again.
seeing you again.